Hey, Smash with you here, doing a little drive talking. I'm telling no lies. I'm gonna go with some old school wrestling right now. I ain't talking about these youngsters. They got in the ring and everybody's, doing their choreographed stuff. And yeah, I love The Rock. Yeah, I love, I even love Hulk Hogan. Yeah, he's now what, the $56 million man. This guy, that's a whole different story. But I grew up with guys like Dick the Bruiser, with guys like Cowboy Bob Ellis, Bobo Brazil, the man who brought us the Cocoa Butt, Baron von Raschke, who gave us the Iron Claw, all the greats. The Kangaroos, the Flying Kangaroos out of Australia. Who knew where they were from? But for wrestling purposes, they were out of Australia. And I got to tell you what, one of the things that I learned as far as being a great frontman is concerned is I watched guys like Jimmy Hart, one of the greatest managers of all time. And I also watched guys like Bobby the Brain Heenan, the greatest manager of all time. And then, of course, you had like Sam Menaker, one of the greatest commentators of all time. In fact, I was blessed that in my time I became friends with Dick the Bruiser. Dick the Bruiser and I did a gig together. I didn't know him. He didn't know me. I had gone to see Dick the Bruiser at, I think it was Channel 6 in Indianapolis, Indiana. Back in those days, they used to have wrestling in the TV studio, right there in the studio. And that's where I first saw Dick the Bruiser. But as a DJ at WNAP Radio in Indianapolis at that time, I wound up doing some charitable type of gig, and the Bruiser was there. I didn't know he was going to be there. But the gig involved being in one of those dunk tanks where people throw like a baseball at the arm, and then, if you hit it, the guy went down in the water and everybody laughed at you. You came out wet and you had to laugh and act like you were happy and all that kind of stuff. I'm walking up to the dunk tank, and who do I see in a dunk tank next to me? Because there were two dunk tanks. Dick the Bruiser. And he talked like that. Continually talked like that. And the reason he talked like that, because he was a football player with the Green Bay Packers and got kicked in the throat. And that caused him to have that kind of voice. Well, that was magnificent for wrestling. So I'm sitting next to a hero of mine, because I used to watch him on TV. I used to watch him over there when Papa used to take us on over there to Channel 6 in the studio. And I got to be next to Dick the Bruiser. Dick the Bruiser looks at me. He doesn't know who I am. I'm relatively new jock, DJ on the scene. And Dick the Bruiser looks at me and says, "I hate this crap." Just like that. Only crap wasn't the word that he used. And I looked at him and I said, "You know what, man? I hate this crap too," because I always hated dunk tanks. But you had to be happy being in the water, and you helped raise money for charity and all that, so it was all cool and everything, but you always hated having to get wet. And Dick the Bruiser next to me had that same commonality, the hatred of the water of the dunk tank. And that's where I first met Dick the Bruiser. It was just like a magnificent birth to a friendship. Now, I became good friends with Dick the Bruiser, and back then wrestling folk had territories. Like Sam Munchnick had St. Louis. Dick the Bruiser had kind of like northern Indiana, into a little bit of Michigan, into a little bit of Ohio. And so Dick used to take me with him to various gigs and everything. So I never forget, he took me up to Fort Wayne once, and I was the color commentator there, sat on the edge of the ring and just talked wrestling stuff, because he would tutor me on the way as far as what to deliver to the viewing audience is concerned. So I got to be a relatively decent color coordinator, color commentator in that particular era. But the best ride I ever had with Dick the Bruiser, he said, "Hey, you want to go down to Brown County, Indiana?" So I said, "Sure." Now, Dick the Bruiser had himself one of these pimped-out Cadillacs. I mean, it was magnificent. So pimped out. It was a convertible. So pimped out that it had one of those big covered tires on the back, an extended bumper with a big old covered tire and everything. It was pimp before pimp was cool. Serious business. So I'm driving down there. He's talking and everything. He said, "You mind if we get on a couple of motorcycles?" Well, I rode Harleys in those days. I thought, sure. We're going to go down to Brown County, get on some motorcycles. So we get down there, and it's these, knobby tire dirt bike type of motorcycles. I thought, oh, no, I don't know how to ride these things. So that's a different ride than being on a street cycle, But anyhow, I rode because I was with Dick the Bruiser. he goes into this little shack on the edge of the forest, and he comes out with 2-gun holster and bandoleros of bullets strapped across his chest. Now, it's coming to dusk, twilight, and I'm thinking, uh-oh, I'm going with Dick the Bruiser into the forest, following him on a motorbike that I don't really know how to ride, but I got to because it's Dick the Bruiser, and he says, come on, Smash, we got to go make a pickup. Go into the forest, and I mean into the bumps and everything. Brown County is just beautiful forestry over there. And then we come into a clearing in the woods. And in this clearing in the woods, there's a wooden box. This wooden box is flat on the ground. And the wooden box was shaking a little bit. Now, it is relatively near nightfall, all right? So this wooden box is shaking. I said, Dick, what is that? And he said, I hope it's what I hope it is. And it was a raccoon. He had caught a raccoon in this box in the middle of this open campfire type of area, I guess where him and his buddies used to go. So he gets that box, which had fallen down in a booby trap type of situation, on top of this raccoon. Now, this raccoon's got to be angry, because who knows how many hours or days this raccoon had been in this box. So Dick the Bruiser takes another piece of wood, because there's a wooden box, and slides it underneath so the raccoon wouldn't get out. So you slide it underneath first so the raccoon don't, if you pick up the box, boom, the raccoon jumps on your face. Hasta la bye-bye face. Now, he does that, and then he ties it up with a rope. Then he takes that same box. Now that box is not just shaking, not just moving, it is rattling, because this raccoon is angry, it's boxed up, and this raccoon wants to get out. So he ties that to the back of his bike. We get back to the car. Now keep in mind, you got motorcycles here, right? And with all those bumps in the forest and everything, you get shook. And that raccoon had to have been shaken awfully, because it was a little tiny box. Now, we get back to the car. Convertible, thank you, Lord, because if it had not been a convertible, I don't know what I'd have done. So he says, have a seat, Smash. I have a seat. He takes the box with the raccoon flailing inside of it, trying to get out of this box that just had a rope around it. And this raccoon was placed, this box, on my lap by Dick the Bruiser. And I'm sitting there, I'm thinking, no. And I'm saying to myself, please, please, no. And he said, you hold that box right there till we get back to Indianapolis. I'm thinking, no, he's going to have it on me all the way to Indianapolis. And that's, back in those days, was about an hour and 15-minute trip. And I'm telling you, I'm like this on top of the box, because I don't want that raccoon out, because I know as soon as that raccoon gets out, what's going to happen? He's going to ram himself into my countenance and thus alter the beautiful face that I, Sir Smash, have had all these years. And then I'm thinking, if that don't happen, he's going to jump on Dick, who's driving, and Dick's going to like ram us into a tree or something like that. So the raccoon is shaking the box all the way to Indianapolis. And so we get to Dick's house, and he takes the box from me, thank you, Lord, for that, and carries it into his backyard. Now, this was the first time I had been in his backyard. I've been in his house, but first time in his backyard. In his backyard, he has 3 cages. 2 of them already have raccoons in them. He puts this other raccoon in the cage, in the box, slides the top off of the box, and the raccoon jumps out, but luckily is caged. He said, thanks a lot, Smash. You know what I'm going to call that raccoon? I said, no, Dick, what? Because I am just traumatized to the max. And he said, I'm going to name her Lucille. It reminds me of my wife, that raccoon. And so that raccoon, from that particular day, was known as Lucille. And I'd go back there in the summer, you know, and we'd go swimming or whatever over Dick the Bruiser's pool and all that. And you'd go back there and you see these 3 raccoons, and you see Lucille over there. And the raccoons, first 2 raccoons, you didn't think too much of it. But Lucille, if you went back and saw Lucille, Lucille knew I was the guy that held her in that box, in that car. And I just had a feeling that if indeed Lucille had gotten loose, there would have been no Smash Eel, because Lucille would have unleashed her zeal to destroy me as the man who was her captor. I love Dick the Bruiser. God, I love that story. As the song goes, memories press between the pages of my mind. And thus, in that historic episode in the life of Asher Smashington, putting it forth to you, I can only say you have been digging the smash.